The Neo Geo had 2D visuals so ahead of its time that they never fell behind the times, unlike that one uncle of yours jokes. The Neo Geo spotted everyone else over 2 decades to design 2D visuals that were up to par, and in my opinion, well, if the Neo Geo isn't still the best, one could certainly make the argument for it. In fact, I will. The amount of detail, in addition to the superb animation you'll find, combined with the overall style, still makes for some of the best looking 2D games, and for me, some of the prettiest things I've ever laid my eyes upon, period. And trust me, I've seen some beautiful things in my time. If you wanted to make the argument that every single Neo Geo game will always be fun forever, I wouldn't stop you. Then again, I'm also somebody who once failed to stop someone who said pie is better without ice cream on it, so maybe I'm not one to stop things. In any case, what I am going to do is take the time to highlight 5 games that I feel are especially qualified. Oh, and remember, lots of different ways to play Neo Geo games without collecting them. There's far more impressive things to be collecting anyways. But with that, what better game to start with than Metal Slug? Well, how about Metal Slug 3? But while all the Metal Slugs are great, I do want to focus on the first one because it's the game that feels the most like a traditional run and gun game to me. And if you think you've played good run and gun games before with your Gunstar Heroes and your Contra, well, you actually have. Those are really good games. But if you want even more awesomeness, you gotta try out Metal Slug. The later Metal Slug games added a lot of crazy stuff that, don't get me wrong, is mostly awesome, but there's a certain charm to the first game being played primarily on foot, with, of course, the tanks you get into every now and then, appropriately called Metal Slugs. And what a cool name for a game. I mean, I could have made it cooler, but hey, still pretty good. What makes the series so well known is all here in the first game. The insane amount of detail in the sprite work, excellent animation, and fun variety of all the usual suspects, weapons, enemies, bosses, and, unique to Metal Slug, all the funny little jokes that the game slips into the stages, some of which you have to really be paying attention for in order to spot. As a matter of fact, if you like the style of my videos with bits of humor sprinkled in, you'll appreciate the approach taken with Metal Slug. Alright, next game on my list, and don't tell Tetris, but my favorite puzzle game of all time, Bust-A-Move. Called Puzzle Bobble in other parts of the world, for some reason the US wanted it to sound like some sort of dancing game. In fact, there's an actual dancing game called Bust-A-Groove that probably bitterly took its name after finding out Bust-A-Move was already taken by a puzzle game. I think what this game nails as a puzzle game is the sensory feedback it gives you. The sound of the bubbles popping, combined with the visual effect, never gets old. I like how once you get rid of a color, it never comes back, providing an added incentive to clear out colors when you can. Really hate a certain color for some random reason? Well, then this game's for you. But perhaps my favorite part of this puzzle game is being able to clear a ton of bubbles by popping bubbles that other colors are hanging underneath. This sets up for some massive momentum shifts and gives the game an extra layer to consider as you're playing because of the risk-reward associated with it. Wait too long and it can backfire on ya, like not brushing your teeth. So long, teeth. Might be one of the only puzzle games I can think of where aiming is a big factor too. The challenge of getting good at aiming, combined with going for high-reward shots, not to mention the generally cheery and colorful aesthetic of the game, make this my favorite puzzle game to recommend because, well, it's my favorite puzzle game to play. Somebody told Tetris, didn't they? Next game on my list is Baseball Stars 2. Still my favorite baseball game to play, not that that's much of an honor, but probably my favorite arcade sports game to play as well, although NBA Hang Time is certainly in there too. The goal of any great arcade sports title is to simplify things while adding a little bit of flair and exaggerating the fun parts, kinda like my dance moves. Ever try to play a more realistic sports game when you're used to the more arcadey ones? It feels like trying to run backwards. Baseball Stars 2 has a great style to it as well. The players all look like they've been chomping on steroids. They'll snap their bats when they strike out. They'll taunt the pitcher after attempting to pick them off. And sometimes a batter, after being hit by a pitch, will rush the pitcher and actually punch him out, which then forces the pitcher to leave the game. And having fresh pitchers is a vital resource in this game. Very clever way of rewarding the player with style. Now, as simple as the game is, it does still allow you to do some more complicated things, like telling the runners to advance extra bases or go back to the bases they came from, all with the press of a single button while holding a direction on the stick that corresponds to the direction of the proper base. I love the very vivid use of color in this game too. Just a fantastic game. Makes me think of playing arcade games in a pizza parlor back in the day after a Little League game, but playing this arcade game ends up being 10 times more fun than the real-life baseball you were just playing. Next game on my list is Neo Drift Out. Probably the least well-known game on my list, but you know what they say about games that are less well-known? Less people know about them. So I feel it necessary to talk about it. The game could be described as an isometric racer, which might sound like bad news to some people, but the game pulls it off well, giving you just the right amount of time to react to upcoming turns, mastering the turns, and avoiding the obstacles in order to shave seconds off your time is a lot of fun, and I find the level of challenge to be pretty much perfect, and depending how good at it you are, it only takes about 5 to 10 minutes to play, so when deciding between either playing this game or doing something productive, do both by playing this game. One that always comes as a really quick recommendation from me. In fact, barely even needed to say much about it, and I'm moving on to the next game, which is Shock Troopers. Oh, how I love Shock Troopers. This game has always felt like the pinnacle of top-down run-and-gun games, of which there aren't very many, at least not as many as there should be. I find this game makes a great complement to the Metal Slug games for the platform because it plays sort of similarly, blasting away everything with some satisfying pixel work to animate all of it. But operating from a different perspective, you're going to want to master rolling around in this game. No, not you, your character. Otherwise, you will die a lot. Defense is key. It's easy to get fixated on hammering away at the fire button, but you'll last much longer if you prioritize defense first. And while the game doesn't have nearly the level of nuance in it as the Metal Slug games, I mean, what does, I still think it does a great job of mixing up where you are and what you're doing. You can even select different paths through the game. Some of the bosses are really hard, but it's an appreciated challenge. Also, it should come as no surprise that the game has bananas you can pick up to replenish your life bar. I mean, sure seems like a lot of great games have bananas in them. What I really love is some of the weapons you pick up in this game. You have a limited amount of ammo, so you're constantly trying to make the best use of good weapons while you have them, as well as keeping an eye on additional weapon pickups to grab as you run low on life. Like Metal Slug, this is a fantastic game to play with 2 players as well. Highly recommended. And with that, those are the 5 Neo Geo games I wanted to highlight. Certainly not the only Neo Geo games that will always be fun though, so be sure to write in the comments which games you would suggest. Odds are they'll be games that I've played a bunch of and can enthusiastically agree with you on. Like the fighting games, of which it's poetic justice that some of you probably want to punch me for not talking about. So leave a comment or metaphorical punch in the face down below with your suggestions or thoughts, and I will see ya in the next video.